I want to talk about the colors on the website and kind of making it our website. So far, we don't have any kind of branding on here. We don't have any logo. So it still says my store on the top, for example. To change all of that stuff, of course, we could click on logo, but the best way to get to that is on the left side. So we have sections. Section is going to be like our hierarchy tree. Below that, we have theme settings. So within theme settings, it all starts to kind of unravel now. We have the logo and the favicon. So favicon is going to be, I don't know if you guys can see in my screen recording. Yeah, so if I do that, you can see it right there, a little Shopify logo that's showing up on the top of the website right now. You don't want that. You want it to be your logo showing up on the top of your own website. So let's choose the default logo. This is going to be probably shown at the top. I'll add a file. And let's say this is going to be like an outfitter, I don't know, just like a outdoor kind of store. So I've got a little kind of fictitious logo made up right here. I'm going to add this logo. So let's select that one. We'll say done. Nice. We've got a logo, and you can see it added it automatically in the top there. We can have an inverse logo if we ever need a different color. Let's add that just in case. So I'll select a favicon, upload something super simple. You want a logo that's going to be, not a bunch of letters up there because it is so tiny on the top of a browser. We could say done. And now we can start choosing our colors. Now there are 7 actually different color schemes here. Sometimes there's not quite as many. We can also add more as well if you wanted more, but each one, so this entire section would use like one scheme. The group could use a different scheme as we talked about before, but this is all color scheme 1. So you'll probably want one that's kind of white based, one that's dark based, maybe some in between that are like more colorful, more accent style ones. So let's say I'm going to go with scheme 2. And I'm going to change the background to white. Let's make it white. And then maybe we want to match the colors of the logo for like the text and stuff like that. Now, if you don't know the color of your logo or other elements in your graphics, we can go to Google and just type in HTML color code identifier. And there's tons of free ones out there. I'm just going to choose the first option in Google here. We can upload our image, say use your image. From here, you can just click any part. So like the green right here. We can then highlight that hex code. I'll copy that. And then over here for the headings, we could just paste in that hex code there. So hit enter, and that should be green now. Same thing with this one. Maybe the links will be green. Let's just make everything. The primary button could also be green. And you can change so much for each color scheme. As you can see, we've got the inputs, we've got different variants. So like if someone's literally typing on your website, anything like that, you can change colors for literally everything for each scheme. But that's how you'll go about changing the schemes. Just showing you got to, set up multiple. And I recommend going through and at least setting up like 3 or 4 when you're getting started so that you have those options for each block. And it's more consistent across other pages and checkout and everything on your website. So with that color scheme set up, before we continue here, let's just kind of set that as the color scheme for this first section. If I click on welcome section, I can then go down and select the color scheme. Let's set it to scheme 2. It'll change all of this to a darker green to match the logo. That looks decent. I like how that's set up. Ultimately, I think I might change the top in a minute anyway, but let's go back to those settings. So that's how you can go about managing the colors throughout your website for buttons, for text, and for images, or really pretty much everything, honestly. Typography, you can change the fonts throughout your website. So generally, you don't want to have a lot of fonts on any website. So Shopify gives you, 4 fonts right here, and they're going to be consistent on your website. So the body, we can choose, from a number of different fonts. I'm not going to change these. I think that these are fine for what I'm doing, but if you wanted something that maybe in headings you want like something a little bit more rustic or a little bit more in line with whatever your style is, you can select it and see what it's looking like on your website in real time. So I don't know, maybe Lobster 2, that's a funny name for a font. So maybe that's going to be the one we want. I'll just say select, just for the sake of showing what that is. We can also choose some different font aspects. So if you want larger font for paragraph, or if you want the line height to change, if you want to, this is really getting a little bit more nitty gritty here as you start editing through your website. So this right here, I believe should be a heading 1. So if we go to heading 1, we could change the size of that, maybe make that like, a lot bigger or a little bigger. It actually didn't affect it. That must be an H2 right there. Yeah, that's H2. So you can see heading 2, you're able to change, if you want that size a little bit bigger or smaller, this is where it'll go to change the size. So if you want to change the size for some font on your website, say the header, and you want it to be a little bigger and you can't just click and drag to resize that, you'll go here into settings, go to theme settings, go to fonts, and then for H2, which that one is, you're able to change the size of that font to be, a little bit smaller or a little bit larger. We can also change, like I said, the line height. So if we want it to be normal, a little taller, or loose, normal, a little shorter, or loose, give you some more space there. Same thing with letter spacing. We can space it out a little bit more. make it a little easier to read with a font such as this. And if you ever wanted to switch everything on your website to all caps, you could definitely do it. That's going to look so bad with this kind of handwriting style, but let's go back to default, and we don't need that. Same thing with all the other ones, headings, 1 through 5. Then page layout. We have some settings down in page layout. We can choose if we're going to have a normal, wide, or narrow website. Narrow websites are pretty versatile on a lot of other devices. We can set animations, so if we have an animation or not when we're transitioning between pages. And I know earlier we could customize the buttons in the, in terms of color up there, but we can also change, the border radius. So on these buttons, if we want it to be have a little more of a radius, you can even make them like super rounded off. If we do something like this, you can see it looks like a little pill right now. But I'm going to leave it, somewhere around maybe 25 for this website. We can change the font if we want it to be an accent font or the primary font on the buttons. The text weight, we could also make it a little bolder on buttons as well, just to make things stand out a little more. It doesn't really look great there, so I'm going to leave it as it was. We have settings for our cart, although not a ton of settings right here. You can decide if it's a page or a drawer. So drawer will pop out on the other side. Page is going to be, an entire cart page. Kind of self-explanatory there. And if it is a drawer, you have some settings here for what that's going to be. Maybe that's going to be color scheme 2, which is really utilizing, the theme colors of green that we have in our logo. There's a bunch of other things like icons, input fields, popovers, all these different things have some subtle settings you can adjust in them. So like swatches if you want to change settings for that. But I recommend kind of browsing through this, setting up everything as you like early on in designing your website. So now I think is a really good time once we have a little bit of the structure for the website. That's a good time to start changing colors and seeing what's going to actually look good. So when we finish the building of our website, we have everything ready to go as we start to add more things on here.